You guys got to watch the interview between the rideshare guy, Harry Campbell. I respect him. He's great as one of my mentors. I like the guy a lot, and he gets some interesting characters on his show. These guys like Andrew McDonald will not come on my show because I would just bombard them with tough questions, right? But what I do like is that Harry had really, really targeted good questions, driver questions. He wanted more information. All that Andrew McDonald wanted to do is you could see it was more. He was sort of pretending he was trying to create a balance between rider and drivers, but you could clearly see he was always protecting the rider, right? And then when asked where he got the information, feedback from the drivers, he said, customer service, dude, fool, wake up. You don't get any information from Manila there. We disrespect that 1-800 line. You got to go down, get in a car, talk, go to airports, to functions, to venues. You got to meet with drivers and get the real deal. You can't just sit there and talk smack and say, well, we get these reports from customer service. Customer service in Manila will give you nothing, right? It's a hamster wheel, cut and paste, auto responder. You're not going to get any true driver feedback there. You need to hustle it. You need to get into the Facebook chat rooms. You need to jump into live feeds. You need to mix it up. You need to be able to tap in to the heartbeat of drivers. And that's where he is so out of touch. He's an amateur. You could see by his body language when an uncomfortable question came, he starts getting very, very restless. And in one situation, you could see the question was way too tough for him. So he first, body language, he takes a leap back. Then he comes back like with an attacking answer. And he jumps forward into the screen and thinks, well, now I'm going to show you. This is, So the guy's a fool. The guy's an absolute fool. He's not dialed in. He's way too young for that position, right? Seems a little bit gung-ho. And you can clearly read between the lines where the favoritism is, and that's towards the rider. Then let me just address another sort of question answer that they covered about the masks. Firstly, when you go out and you create something in theory because you had a brain fart, right? You're going to say, oh, okay, we're going to photograph the drivers. We have to ID them. We don't have to photograph the riders. Why? Because we don't want to alienate their base. We don't want to piss them up. It's got to be freedom of choice on their side. But by the way, you can decline that trip if they're not wearing a mask. What you're doing is you're setting up a whole lot of problems, right? And it's not well thought through. It was not professional what he did here. You got to follow the same protocol for drivers and riders, meaning if you ID the driver, you got to ID the rider as well. Both have to be compliant, because the stories, the real street feedback that we are getting is that out of every 7 or 8 trips, only 1 or 2 passengers are complying with the marks. They will use every excuse under the book. This guy has given them every out. Well, we did not know, we were not informed, we didn't realize that we had to do that. No, you have to have systems in place, and they may piss off the rider, they may antagonize the rider, but it's about the safety of both. It's not just about the safety of the driver. It's about the safety of the driver and the rider by both IDing both sides, right? Both sides have to be fully checked out and comply. And that's where he's cutting corners, and that is where this sort of arrogant, unprofessional Uber touch comes in again. They just don't get it. They are not dialed into street level. They come up with these fancy schwancy ideas 10 times a week. They change the app constantly. They create so much confusion, but the bottom line is they are not addressing the issue. They never address the issue, and they also never address the issue of pay. So when you implemented this new mask rule, right? Drivers need to be ID'd, passengers don't need to be ID'd. This fool made the biggest mistake, right? And what's happening here is that drivers are getting pissed off, right? We did a calculation. I got a lot of feedback from drivers. At about 7, 8 trips, 2 passengers are complying with the mask rule. The rest have fancy excuses, which these guys have set up. They have set up a system And they've put a system in place which allows the rider to come up with all these excuses because they're not held to the same standards as the driver. So he truly, truly does not know what he's doing out there on street level. It's just these willy-nilly young ideas. Hey, I've got this fancy idea. This is how we're going to do it. We're going to interact with the engineers. We're going to program this. But they never go out and test. They never go out on street level, interview drivers and get into the cars and really ask people, hey, how is this playing out? A driver will tell you it's not working out with this whole mask thing because we're doing our part. They are not doing their part. So disaster after disaster after disaster. Andrew McDonald, dude, step down. Step down. Do the company, do the drivers a favor. Step down. You're young, you're immature, and you are an amateur. And you've shown it in this interview very, very clearly.